He's quoted throughout the Mishnah and the Talmud. And there's a legend that goes along with Mr. Ben Zakkai, if that's even, you can even use that, is that during the war, he began to see visions. He began to see the fall of Jerusalem. He began to see the demise of the Jewish people. In one vision, he saw Vespasian being crowned emperor. So he had his students put him in a coffin, carry him out of the city into the tent of Vespasian, where he emerged from the coffin and told Vespasian of his prophecies, or of his visions, and told him that he would be crowned king. Now at this point, the legend goes two different directions. Some say that at that very moment, a scribe from Rome entered into the tent, told Vespasian, the emperor is dead, you're king. And Ben Zakkai was standing there when it happened. The other is it was several years down the road. But, nonetheless, Vespasian was crowned as emperor of Rome. In his respect for the prophecy of Yochanan ben Zakkai, he granted him a favor. Yochanan ben Zakkai asked for the city of Yevna and his students, or scribes, to go with him. And you can see on this map, Yevna is in between the Gaza Strip and Tel Aviv, which is well outside of Jerusalem. The only concern of the Romans at that point was the overthrow of Jerusalem, because it was the religious capital of Judaism. If you overthrow Jerusalem, you overthrow the Jewish people. So, when Yochanan ben Zakkai took, after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE, he takes his students to Yevna and reforms the Sanhedrin in Yevna. He takes Gamaliel's grandson, whose name was Gamaliel, and places him as the Nasi, or the chief rabbi. Nasi actually, in biblical Hebrew, means the Prince of Israel. So, when, with this new council being established outside of Jerusalem, they begin to reform things. Jewish life without a temple. But the first thing they had to do was change their name, because to be known as a Pharisee meant death. If you carried the Torah, if you held the scriptures, you still had hold of the Jewish roots, regardless of the temple. And to be considered a Pharisee, they'd kill you. So they had to change what they were referred to as. They were no longer the Purushim. They changed their names to rabbis, the masters, the exalted ones. It's really what they considered themselves to be anyway, so why not? But we have to look at one thing. If we can go all the way to this point and we see, okay, this is where rabbis were born. This is where rabbinic Judaism began. In Yevna, with the council in Yevna, the Sanhedrin reformed. This is where the Talmud was written. This is where the Mishnah was written. This is where Judaism as we know it today was formed. But what does that mean to believers? What does that mean to us? Of course, Judaism was really what we know Judaism as today, was born here. But what does it mean to us? Paul, he said, but when Paul perceived that one part of the Sadducees and the other part of the Pharisees, one part was Sadducees and the other part Pharisees, he cried out in the council, "Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Concerning the hope and the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged." And then he said, as a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided, for the Sadducees that said that there was no resurrection and no angels or spirit, but the Pharisees confessed both. And then there arose a loud cry, and the scribes of the Pharisees' party arose and protested, saying, "If we find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against God." So you have almost the same quote as Gamaliel as this council rose up. And Paul, in all his wisdom, used one phrase to divide this group of men, because the Sadducees came from a different school, the school of Shammai, or Beit Shammai, which were taught that there's no resurrection from the dead, there's no angels, there's no spiritual anything, we are what we are, and then we're one food. And it's so sad, you see. But Paul recognized this and rallied his brothers, his Pharisaic brothers, to his defense. So Paul himself, admittedly, is a Pharisee, son of a Pharisee. We move on to, it says that he was circumcised on the 8th day, of the stock of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew concerning the law, a Pharisee concerning zeal, persecuting the church, concerning the righteousness, which is the Torah, and blameless. So Paul, a Torah observant Pharisee, by all right, is a rabbi. If all the Pharisees that left Jerusalem and went to Yevna and changed their name to Rabbi, if they fall under that context, then Paul does too.